He was arguably the most important professional wrestler of all time. He didn't just participate in the sport, transformed it, taking a regional spectacle and launching it into a global entertainment empire that defined a generation. His face was on lunchboxes, his voice was on Saturday morning cartoons, and his matches were monumental events that brought families together. For millions, he was more than a wrestler. He was a superhero. But what happens when the hero is also human? And what do we do when that hero is gone? Hulk Hogan's story is one of unimaginable highs and staggering lows, a journey that has forced fans to question the very icon they grew up with. With his passing on July 24, 2025, at the age of 71, the conversation around his legacy has become more urgent than ever. Behind the yellow and red lies a far more complicated story, a saga of triumph and tragedy, of inspiration and controversy. To understand it, you have to hear from the people who made him immortal, the fans. We asked diehard Hulkamaniacs to share their stories and reflect on the complicated legacy of the man who defined an era, Hulk Hogan. In the early 1980s, professional wrestling was a gritty, regional affair. Then, a 6'7" mountain of muscle, with a handlebar mustache and python's forearms, stepped into a WWF ring, and everything changed. On January 23, 1984, Hulk Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik at Madison Square Garden to become the WWF champion, and in that moment, Hulkamania was born. He was an all-American hero, a real-life superhero for the Reagan era, who vanquished evil foreigners and rule-breakers with a smile on his face and the power of his Hulkamaniacs behind him. It was a cultural movement. Hogan, alongside Vince McMahon, transformed wrestling into a mainstream phenomenon, headlining 7 of the first 8 WrestleManias and creating moments that are now etched into pop culture history. For a generation of children, he was their first hero. I was 7 years old when I first saw him on TV. I remember it so clearly. My dad was watching, and this giant of a man came out to this incredible rock music. It's the way he tore his shirt off, the way the crowd went insane. He wasn't just a big guy in trunks. He was like Captain America come to life. When he started hulking up, shaking off the punches like they were nothing, you believed it. You absolutely believed he was invincible. For me, he wasn't a character. He was a superhero, plain and simple. This feeling culminated at WrestleMania 3 in 1987, in front of a massive crowd at the Pontiac Silverdome. Hogan faced the seemingly unbeatable The Giant. While WWE has long claimed a record-breaking attendance of 93,173, that number has been disputed for years, with many insiders suggesting the real figure was closer to 78,000. But the number itself was less important than the spectacle. It was an epic clash between an unstoppable force and an immovable object. And then came the moment that defined an era, the bodyslam heard round the world. Hogan lifted the 500-pound giant and slammed him to the mat, a feat that felt impossible until it happened.
Yes.
In that moment, he wasn't just a champion. He was a myth, a legend, a hero who taught millions of kids that anything was possible. Hogan's first reign as WWF champion lasted an incredible 1,474 days. The 4th longest reign in the title's history. He was more than a wrestler. He was a brand. His image was everywhere, from action figures to the cover of Sports. Illustrated, the first wrestler to ever achieve that feat. He co-hosted Saturday Night Live, starred in the movie Rocky III as Thunderlips, and had his own CBS cartoon, Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling. He was a household name, a cultural force who made wrestling cool. Central to this phenomenon was a simple, powerful message. It sounds cheesy now, looking back, but train, say your prayers, and eat your vitamins was a legitimate moral code for a generation of kids. It was simple, it was positive, and it came from our hero. We all did the pose, cupping our hand to our ear. We all bought the bandanas. It wasn't just about watching wrestling. It was about being a part of something. You were a Hulkamaniac, is that mantra. As basic as it was, made you feel like if you just did the right things, you could be strong like him. It was incredibly powerful for a young fan. Hogan's crossover appeal was undeniable. He partnered with Mr. T at the very first WrestleMania, bringing Hollywood glamour to the squared circle and changing the business forever. He formed the Mega Powers with Macho Man Randy Savage, creating one of the most iconic and dramatic storylines of the era. He was an attraction, a guaranteed draw, who filled arenas and sold out pay-per-views. He was the sun around which the entire wrestling universe revolved. But as the 1990s dawned, the landscape began to change, and the once unthinkable began to seem necessary. By 1994, Hulkamania felt like a relic of a bygone era. Hogan left WWE for its rival, World Championship Wrestling WCW, but brought the same Redondiello character with him. Fans were growing tired of the squeaky clean hero. They wanted something edgier, something more realistic. On July 7, 1996, at the Bash at the Beach pay-per-view, they got it. In what is still considered one of the most shocking moments in wrestling history, Hulk Hogan, the ultimate good guy, turned his back on the fans. He revealed himself as the secret third member of the invading Outsiders, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, dropping his signature leg drop on his friend Randy Savage. He was no longer the real American. It was Hollywood Hogan, the arrogant, black-clad leader of the New World Order, or NWO. I was a teenager when it happened, and my friends and I were just stunned. It was like watching Superman join Lex Luthor. We had spent our entire childhoods cheering for this man, and then he just spat on all of it. The promo he cut after the match, telling the fans to stick it, was just unbelievable. We hated it, but we couldn't look away. Suddenly, wrestling wasn't for kids anymore. It felt dangerous, real, and unpredictable for the first time. The NWO made wrestling cool again, and it was all because our hero became the villain. The heel turn revitalized Hogan's career and launched WCW into its most successful period, famously beating WWE in the ratings for 83 consecutive weeks. The NWO wasn't just a wrestling faction. It was a pop culture phenomenon that blurred the lines between fiction and reality. Hogan had proven he could be the biggest hero in the industry and its biggest villain. He had reinvented himself, and in doing so, had changed the business once again. He returned to WWE in 2002 for a legendary Icon versus Icon match against The Rock at WrestleMania X8, where the fans, filled with nostalgia, cheered their childhood hero, despite him being the villain, creating one of the most electric crowd reactions in wrestling history. For all the glory inside the ring, the legacy of the man, Terry Bollea, is far more complex. The line between the larger-than-life character and the flawed human being began to blur, and with it came controversies that had permanently stained his reputation. Where the fans, filled with nostalgia, cheered their childhood hero, despite him being the villain, creating one of the most electric crowd reactions in wrestling history. For all the glory inside the ring, the legacy of the man Terry Bollea is far more complex. The line between the larger-than-life character and the flawed human being began to blur, and with it came controversies that had permanently stained his reputation. There was the steroid trial of the 1990s, where Hogan was forced to admit under oath that he had used performance-enhancing drugs for years, shattering the "eat your vitamins" image he had so carefully crafted. There were persistent stories of backstage politicking and an oversized ego, with Hogan using his creative control clause to protect his spot at the top. But nothing would damage his legacy more than the events of 2015. A leaked tape revealed Hogan making abhorrent racist remarks, leading to his contract being terminated by WWE, while the company distanced itself from him. He was not officially removed from the Hall of Fame and was reinstated 3 years later in 2018. In 2020, he was inducted a second time as part of the NWO. The man who had been a hero to millions was now a pariah, condemned for words that were impossible to defend. It's tough. It really is. You have these incredible foundational childhood memories built around this icon. And then you have to reconcile that with the very real, very serious mistakes of the man. How do you tell your kids about the hero who taught you to believe in yourself, when that same person said such hateful things? It forces you to try and separate the art from the artist, the character from the person, and that's not always easy or even possible. It complicates everything you thought you knew about your own childhood. The fallout was immense. Hogan apologized. But for many fans and fellow wrestlers, the apology rang hollow, feeling more like regret for being caught than genuine remorse. It forced a difficult conversation about who we choose as our heroes and what happens when they fail to live up to the ideals they represent. So, what is Hulk Hogan's legacy? The answer's not simple. It's a tale of two Hogans. There is the immortal Hulk Hogan, the revolutionary figure who, alongside Vince McMahon, built modern professional wrestling. The pop culture icon who made wrestling a global phenomenon and inspired generations of fans and future superstars. The man who gave us the slam heard round the world, the birth of the NWO, and a lifetime of unforgettable moments. And then there is Terry Bollea, the man whose personal failings and unforgivable words cast a dark shadow over that legacy, forcing a painful revaluation of a childhood hero. His is a story of the dizzying heights of fame and the crushing weight of personal responsibility. He was a character that was a cartoon superhero come to life, but the man was undeniably human, with all the flaws that entails. Perhaps the most formidable opponent he ever faced was not in the ring, but within himself. His journey serves as both an inspiration and a cautionary tale, a complex narrative of triumph and tragedy that will continue to be debated by the very fans who once screamed his name. Hulk Hogan's story means something different to everyone. What's your defining Hulk Hogan memory? Is it the body slam, the NWO turn, or something else entirely? Share your story in the comments below.